Hi, welcome back to Vietnam Real Estate Insights, the program that discusses the market trends with industry experts here in Vietnam. I'm Harlow Russell, your host for the program. Today, we have Oliver Brazier, the Managing Director of EzLand, and he'll be discussing the opportunities and challenges of investing your money in Vietnam property. Oliver, great to see you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Great. I'm going to tell the folks a little bit about you. So, Oliver's got an extensive background in investments. Oliver is English and German, and his educational background's in political science and economics in France, and postgraduate executive courses in real estate in Germany. Oliver's had more than 25 years of experience in banking, property, and institutional fund management, and started his management and real estate career, investment career in Germany and Poland in 1996. He's been working 10 years in the European property markets, involved with transactions of more than 1.3 billion euros in property and real estate transactions, and came to Vietnam about 3.5 years ago, looking to invest for his funds, and created EzLand about 1.5 years ago. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So, first off, for our viewers, tell us a little bit about EzLand. What kind of a company is it, and what do you focus on?
Yes, thank you. EzLand is a development company. It acts as a developer for our real estate fund, and it focuses very much on residential projects, and in these residential projects, mainly on what we call affordable housing.
So tell us what that means, affordable housing.
Affordable housing, our definition of affordable housing is basically residential units that don't cost more than $50,000 to $75,000.
$50,000 to $75,000.
That makes them affordable for a vast majority of clients, potential clients here in Vietnam today.
Okay. And what would be the next step up if affordable is $50,000 to $75,000 US dollars? What is kind of how do you define the market then above that?
Yeah, I think above that is what we call mid-level, and then comes high-end and luxury, which is a very different market. If you look at it in terms of per square meter prices in US dollars, affordable ends at about $1,200 a square meter sales price. That's sort of where the limit is.
I see, $1,000 to $1,200 a square meter. Okay, so this is the target area that EzLand plays in.
Yeah.
So you created the company 1.5 years ago. Tell us why you decided to focus in that area, and what were some of the metrics that were compelling for you to set up this company and begin development in Vietnam?
Actually, we researched quite a lot before targeting that specific market segment.
Okay.
I have quite a lot of experience from European markets, but also emerging markets in Europe quite some time ago, like Poland in the 90s. And so basically what I remembered was that wherever there is an emerging middle class, wherever salaries, incomes, etc. are rising, consumption is rising, etc., there is also demand for housing. But actually that demand for housing has to be met with the right product. And so after looking at several Asian markets, China, India, etc., where you've had an affordable housing market for quite some time, we decided that for Vietnam it was about time to do this. Vietnam has had a bit of a boom and a bust, but mainly in the high-end and luxury, a little bit of mid-end market. And following that, which is over now, we clearly saw that this segment, affordable housing, was going to be the most interesting segment in the future.
Well, you mentioned boom and bust, and Vietnam has gone through some cycles. So could it be that the trend, the increasing trend, could also be a bit of a bubble or a bust now? What's your view of it? What makes it different now than before?
Several things. Generally, Vietnam has changed a lot. So obviously the economy is much further advanced than it was 5-6 years ago. There's very solid GDP growth. There's still a very young population. It's a very well-educated population. All the trade balances are quite a bit better than other emerging markets, Southeast Asian emerging markets. It has political stability. It combines a lot of fundamentals, as we call them, that make it a very stable real estate or residential real estate market. it is also, this particular market, affordable housing, is far less dependent on foreign buyers. It's something that targets very much local Vietnamese buyers.
The domestic market.
And there is huge demand there. One of the figures we looked at was, for example, research from the consumer brands industry. It's about, there are about 8 to 9 million Vietnamese deemed to be middle class today in Vietnam. That's out of a population close to 90 million.
So about 10% of the
About
population.
10%, and this figure is changing dramatically and very fast. It's estimated that by 2025, about 44 million Vietnamese will be middle class.
Wow,
That is a huge
that's
change.
a five-fold increase.
Yeah, it creates, I always say it creates something like Poland as a country in terms of income and how people want to live, etc. And there's a lot of demand right in that figure there, pent up.
So your experience from Poland, from the
20 years
90s,
ago, yeah.
you're saying is what Vietnam reminds you of that from that time. That's interesting. Any other analogies besides Poland in terms of your European experience that Vietnam reminds you of?
Well, I think we would have to go back quite a bit further, to before I was born, actually. So after the Second World War, I mean, there is a lot of pent-up demand for modern housing. That just has not been met. So I wouldn't call it reconstruction, but I do think that as household sizes change, as incomes rise, there is a huge demand for housing. We haven't actually seen that in Europe since the 50s or 60s.
Okay. Well, in terms of since you've been here this year, 2015, are there any particular points to share with the global audience as to what's happened here? You talked about the rising middle class. You've talked about young demographics here. What else this past year is significant from your standpoint that's happened here to make this an exciting and interesting market?
Well, I think there are some good developments. The government is actually helping a lot. There are some recent law changes that make it easier for foreigners to buy.
Yes.
So that's actually quite significant. Perhaps a little less significant for our market we focus on because it's affordable housing, targeting more Vietnamese buyers. But the high-end luxury market definitely can open up more. So this gives more security to foreign buyers. They can actually own freehold.
Yes.
That is quite a significant change, and it's just one example of Vietnam moving in the right direction. So that's a very directly visible example for that. So there are other things, other legislations, more in details in terms of land ownership, transfers, how you can hold shares, etc. That are interesting too, but that would be leading too far now.
You made an interesting comment that Vietnam is a very stable country in terms of government. Now, the global investor that may be viewing this may find that a bit unusual to say. Vietnam is a socialist country. They may not have heard, much about Vietnam in that sense. Give us a little bit more opinion from your experience in terms of stability in Asia versus countries that may be more on the real estate radar screen, like a Thailand or Malaysia or Indonesia. How do you define the stability of Vietnam for the investor versus, say, other Southeast Asian countries?
Yeah, I think one always has to be a little bit careful when comparing countries and regimes, political regimes or situations. Generally speaking, as a fund investor, we like long-term planning, stability, etc. In Vietnam, we have a rhythm of 5-year congresses, and we have, by virtue then, a very stable government. Compared to some other Southeast Asian countries where we've seen military coups or other dramatic changes in government, that provides us with a very stable long-term environment to plan our rollout, our strategy in terms of investment.
I see. Well, you're bringing, you represent basically European expertise and European funds. Do you see a lot of other European investment funds looking at Vietnam or coming into this marketplace?
Well, yes, I think 2015 has seen a change there. It's definitely on the radar now. For these very reasons, stability compared to other areas in Southeast Asia, and basically very strong economic growth, which puts it on the radar screen generally for people. So yes, we've seen quite a few European, US and other investors come over. As usual, it's not easy to enter a market by flying in and out. So I can only suggest that people spend more time here, hopefully find a good local partner or establish their own offices here, and then it's much easier to actually enter the market. But that is true really with every market, every real estate market. It's a local business, and you actually have to have somebody on the ground to do the business.
Well, exactly. Tell us a little bit about the experience of EzLand. I mean, you are a new developer. You've come in recently and are entering a market for the domestic consumer. Tell us about that. How easy or how difficult has it been, and maybe what have you learned in the first 2 years of setting up EzLand about becoming a developer in Vietnam?
Well, the way we did it was, and again, this is based on experience way back in Poland or in Europe in other markets, we found a good local partner. So we have a very good local partner who's been established here for 8 to 9 years, who's already done a lot of projects, bought land, sold land, and has been basically evolving in terms of experience with the market and the legislation locally. So we were able to combine our forces, if I may say so, and we are really happy to be able to use that local experience. We can combine that local experience with our knowledge from Europe in terms of efficient construction techniques, in terms of good design, in terms of some marketing techniques that we can bring from other markets. So we have a good combination of local experience and expertise with foreign or European expertise.
I see. How interesting thought on, as a European developer or a company with European expertise, how are you having to adjust your building and your planning and your design for the Vietnamese market, for this affordable housing sector? What are significant differences that you are adapting to in Vietnam?
There are several. I think generally speaking, research is very important. We have our own in-house research team, but we've also conducted quite a lot of research through external parties. Anything from online research, door-to-door interviews, focus groups, etc. You have to understand your local market and your local buyers. We are targeting 25 to 30-year-olds, young couples with one kid, basically people who have already a good job, perhaps their second job already, households that earn between $1,000 and $2,000. That's a fast-growing part of the population, especially here in Saigon. They are very modern. They don't watch television anymore. They spend most of their time on the smartphone. They're blogging. They use social media. So actually, that is something we had to adapt to. If I look at the German market or French market, when I want to sell to people there, it's still very old-fashioned compared to Vietnam sometimes. So we've had to refocus a bit on social media and basically how we approach these target customers. The way to reach them is slightly different compared to Europe.
That's very interesting. So I think most people would be surprised to hear that as opposed to France and Germany, let's say, for this audience, you have to be very modern and sophisticated. It sounds like you have to be very much more familiar with online media, social media, to attract this demographic in Vietnam. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's actually quite a difference compared to some older European markets. I think the easiest explanation is whereas 60% of the population here are under 30 in Vietnam, 60% of the population in Germany are above 50. So it's very clear that the marketing techniques and sales techniques have to be adapted. When we come back to fundamentals, what are we actually building or selling? It's more or less the same. What we can bring to Vietnam is a focus on quality. So our EzLand slogan is quality comes first. This is something that has been a bit lacking in Vietnam. We're trying to actually use some, for example, German products in terms of fittings, etc., to bring a bit more quality to affordable housing in Vietnam. So we have adapted to Vietnam in certain areas, but we're also bringing certain other things to Vietnam, which we're lacking here.
Interesting. So let's say some of our viewers may be interested to invest in the Vietnam marketplace, and your expertise is in the affordable housing space, which the end user is primarily Vietnamese. If, let's say, an investor on watching this has, say, $500,000 or maybe $1 million to invest and wants to have something in Vietnam, what would you recommend? What would you suggest? What are some ideas for that investor related to perhaps your space?
Well, I think if I start with these sums, I would definitely not buy one apartment. I would diversify a little bit, and I would actually buy perhaps smaller apartments, 1 or 2 bedroom apartments, 3 or 4 apartments, because these are the apartment types that are really sought after, and it's always going to be easy to let. I wouldn't necessarily go into listed. I wouldn't buy stock without knowing more about it. So indirect is perhaps not such a good idea if I'm investing at that level, but definitely having a small portfolio of apartments. There is professional management here. There are lots of agents here who can deal with that. And as I said, the law has changed. A foreigner can actually own directly. So I think the ground is now prepared, and one can invest in such a way.
From your experience dealing with first-time home buyers, younger people, 25 to 33, and if they were coming to you and asking, well, should this investment be more focused on rental yield or capital gain? Should I be more focused on selling my 1 or 2 bedroom unit in the future, or maybe I can buy and rent out? What would you advise them? What's the market feeling from your standpoint in terms of rental yield versus capital gain?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and especially for investors who come from Hong Kong or Singapore or further afield. We still have fairly okay rental yields here. We are at 6, 7, 8%.
6, 7, 8.
But also what is very interesting, especially with these smaller units and less speculative, let's say residential units, I think there is a real possibility of capital gains or actually growth in terms of value or price. It's a little bit difficult to predict because the market is moving fast and there's new product coming onto the market. We actually think that over the next 5 to 10 years, there is still a significant shortfall, despite all the things we build, in terms of affordable housing and going up to mid-level. So there's always going to be scarcity of product. I think that if you buy the right product in the right location, if you do everything right, let's say, then such an apartment can appreciate in value in 3 to 5 years by about 20%.
Wow, significantly.
So you can enhance your rental yield with that, and perhaps see total returns of 11, 12, 13% per annum.
Now that's if you do everything right.
Yeah.
But of course, like every country, there's risks, and in Vietnam there's gotchas. What are some of the risks and gotchas in terms of buying residential property here in Vietnam? What are some of the considerations that you would say to an investor, be aware of first?
Well, I think like any market you enter for the first time, you should document yourself, and you should actually go through a legal firm or lawyer who has who's basically there for you. Due diligence has to be, like in any other market, conducted, and I would definitely buy from either international developers or the larger local developers. I wouldn't already at the first time go into the secondary market and buy direct. A title check is necessary, but again, I'm using terms or things that are valid in any market. We have all these things now here. We have red books, pink books, we have ownership, legal ownership. It can all be checked. I think it's a fairly safe market nowadays, as long as you stay within those bounds.
Very good. Well, let's shift in terms of institutional investors or fund investors, because that's your background in particular. What would you look at in terms of Vietnam as an opportunity at a larger scale?
I think there is still a lot to do literally in every segment. So not only residential, there's still a lack of good grade A office buildings here. There's a lot to do still in terms of logistics, but also in terms of retail. This is very much an emerging country, and Saigon is the most dynamic part of Vietnam. So there's a lot to do. We have decided to focus on residential and on that particular segment of the affordable market, because that is less volatile, it's very long term, it suits our fund strategy. We like this segment. We may pursue individual projects in the future as well, And that may be grade A office, or it may be luxury, true high-end luxury, because there's still a lack of product here. Generally speaking, if an investor, an institutional investor, comes into the market and is looking for core product or for large units or for large buildings, there's not much here.
Really?
There's really a lack of that. So if such a large investor wants to place $100 million or anything similar to that size, it's very difficult actually.
Really?
Such investors will have to go into development and actually create their own product.
I see. And that's basically EzLand is creating its own product.
I think there's room for us to create core product.
Very good, very good. Well, that concludes our interview with Oliver Brazier, the Managing Director of EzLand. Oliver, thank you for your time and your expertise to share with us today. And thank you for joining us today on Vietnam Real Estate Insights. Please come back for more expert advice on this market. I'm Harlow Russell, your host. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.